Welcome to Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. This podcast is an educational forum on how to deal with complex aspects of immigration and pitfalls to avoid. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Now here's the host of Immigration Insider, Attorney John Nicelli.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Nicelli. I'm an immigration attorney. I've been an immigration attorney for over 40 years, and I've dealt with all different aspects of immigration, both employment-based and deportation-based and family-based. So I've had a wide range of experience doing many things in immigration for many years. So I'd like to tell you today and take this time to allocate to what is going on right now with what you're hearing on the news with all these ICE immigration raids throughout the country. Well, our president ran on the premise that he was going to, cut down on immigration and close the border and do many things. And what's happened, he's issued all these executive orders and told ICE and people in charge that we have to make all these raids. So what's happened is that it scared the general public and the immigrant community quite substantially. I mean, we're getting calls all day long. People are afraid to leave their homes. They're afraid to go to work. They're afraid to send their children to school and many other things. They're even afraid to go to the pharmacy to pick up drugs that they may need, for illnesses. And that's very unfortunate. And it's going to lead to more and more monumental problems for many innocent people who've done nothing wrong other than being here, that came across the border. And unfortunately, their children who are American citizens are probably going to suffer as well. So it's a big problem. So I wanted to quell everybody's fears because ICE, personally, I know many people in ICE, and their priorities are primarily to arrest people that have criminal records. That's their primary focus right now. They're going after gang members, people with drug convictions, murder convictions, rape convictions, child abuse convictions, all kinds of convictions. And unfortunately, many of them went to jail, or maybe didn't go to jail, but yet have a significant conviction, were put in immigration proceedings and either never showed up or may have even been deported and never left. So there's many reasons why that could have happened and did happen. But so we have the situation now that we have millions of people and that are, not supposed to be here and really didn't abide by the law in the United States and have all kinds of problems, and they're causing all kinds of problems. So those people are the ones that immigration is primarily going after. So if they go to a house, they have to have a warrant. So if they knock on your door and they don't have a warrant, you're not required to open the door. You're not required to cooperate in any way if there's not a warrant for a particular person. The only times, from my understanding, is that they're going to homes only when they're looking for a particular person that may have a criminal record or may have an old order of deportation. Those are the people they're looking for, primarily. Now, I've heard recent things by many calls that we're getting. People say that they're going into schools, they're going into homes, they're going into businesses. Again, if they go into a school, they're not looking for any child that's in the school. They are looking primarily in school for gang members, teenage gang members, of which there are many throughout the United States. Unfortunately, in the last administration, they did little to stop the flow of many of these gang members, and they've very much flourished in this country doing what they do, commit crimes and hurt other innocent people. So ICE, and I have to agree with it, they are going after people who are gang members, have committed crimes, maybe drug dealers, or gun traffickers, a drug trafficker, or people trafficker, or whatever it may be. That's who their primary focus is. Second in line are people who have orders of deportation. If you have an order of deportation, you've been here for many years hiding, well, it's possible ICE can find you. There's many ways they find you. They frequently use social media. They'll check places where you worked. If you have a Social Security, anywhere you use your Social Security, they can check credit cards, many ways to find people. Today, it's pretty difficult to hide with all the social media we have, electronic devices that we use. Those are all traceable to law enforcement in many ways. So if someone comes to your house, as I said, They have to present a warrant. You're not required to open that door. Do not open that door unless someone has a warrant. You do not have to cooperate. You can say, I'm not cooperating. If I'm being profiled or you're coming to arrest me because you just want to arrest me and not someone you have a warrant for, it's not going to happen. Okay, you're not going to allow that to happen. You do not have to give permission for them to search. You tell them, search warrant. You can search my person if you have a search warrant. You can search my house if you have a search warrant. But other than that, you do not let anybody in the door. The same applies whether schools are in a business. Many times they go to businesses, so the whole neighborhood gets scared. Immigration is working in the field. Well, they're working to looking for a particular person. So they may take a particular person out of the shop or bakery or restaurant or wherever it may be, but generally they have to have a warrant to pick up that person. And the only reason they went to that address is because they know that that person is more than likely working there or living there or staying there for whatever reasons, and they have a warrant for that person's arrest. So they can't just walk into a restaurant. They can't just walk into a gasoline station or a shop, a bakery, or anything like that unless they have a warrant, okay? They can't go and say, well, I don't like the color of that guy's hair. I don't like the way that lady's dressed. I don't like the color of their skin. I don't like the way they look. That's profiling. That's illegal in this country and cannot survive and should not survive. So if people are profiled, if you're walking in the street, you get stopped by an ICE officer, you do not have to cooperate. Why am I being stopped? Well, let's say you are stopped when you're scared. Usually people get scared, so they cooperate when they don't have to. So if you have permission to work, you show them your permission to work card. If you have a receipt that your case is in court or you're finished in court, give them that notification from your court. If you have an expired permanent residence card, you can give them a copy of your card with a copy of the renewal notes that you renewed your permanent residence. Okay, there's many, many ways. You can show them that you have family members that are in the military. All right. Usually when they see family members in the military, they usually don't bother you, to be quite honest. They're much more easy on people who have family members in the military. Now, the problem that we have right now is that the current administration doesn't understand the problem. And that's a problem in itself, when the people that are in charge don't understand the problem. So it's really, really, really tragic and problematic for this country. And I don't see anything good coming out of it. So one of the last proposals I heard is that the president and company decided that they want to open Guantanamo Bay. And Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, they want to have 30,000 beds for illegal aliens or people who basically were deported, but were not accepted back by their countries. So that happens many times when people have been out of the country for 20 or 30 years. And the country that they're from says, hey, listen, we don't want them back because they left us so many years ago, keep them. So now what normally would happen when they were rejected in the past, they would just come back and they would be released. Now what Trump and company want to do is that they want to detain these people further. So that's a policy that was used in the past with the Cuban Marielitos. So years ago, there was what they called during the Carter administration, there was a Cuban called a Cuban Marielito boat lift. And people would come from Cuba by boat, by raft, by anything that floats basically, and they would come to Florida and ask for a political asylum. And at that time, Castro at the time decided that he was going to let everybody out of Cuba that was in a mental institution and a prison. And it was many, many problems. So the issue that we had is we didn't know who these people were. They couldn't do background checks because, excuse me, because there was no one to check with. The Cuban government would not cooperate. Fidel Castro was really against the U.S. government at that time. So what happens is we had these thousands upon thousands of these Cubans. So what did they do? So they put them in different prisons throughout the United States. One of them in the Atlanta Penitentiary, and then in Puerto Rico, they used an army base, and there was also some other places. And they would all have their deportation hearings before an immigration judge. Many were released and then committed crimes because they were basically criminals. So once a criminal, they say always a criminal, right? In some cases. So what happened was they would detain them again. but you couldn't detain them indefinitely. So eventually, there was lawsuits saying that they were detained unlawfully because they were detained too long. They had already finished their sentences. And what happened? Eventually, the overwhelming majority of them were released. Then finally, the United States made an agreement with Cuba, and then Cuba took many of them back that had not been released. So the point that I'm making is that the policy didn't work and doesn't work and will not work in the future. So, of course, President Trump believes that, oh, this is the greatest deterrent under the sun. And he has his chief advisor, Stephen Miller, who's the most anti-immigrant person I ever saw in my life, who believe that detaining people and shipping people out and destroying families, that's the best thing we can do in life. Well, that is very un-American. And the policies that they're implementing right now are policies that were done in the past and absolutely do not work. In 1982, President Reagan was the president. And he decided, just like Trump, we have to make all these raids and we're going to get rid of all the illegal aliens. Make raids everywhere, nationwide. At that time, I worked in a prison in Brooklyn, New York, in a Navy. It used to be a Navy prison, but immigration rented the prison from the Navy. And every night they would bring people, mostly from Central America and Mexico, to this prison. They would arrest them for factory raids, in factory raids rather, where the people were working and trying to make a decent living. So after thousands upon thousands of people were arrested, many were deported. And at that time, most of them didn't have criminal records. They were just here illegally. But President Reagan thought with the Republicans that we wanted to clean things up. And in their minds, they did. But this is what happened. So after they did that, they realized, wow, all the crops are rotting in the field in California. And President Reagan was from California. So he knew firsthand from the farmers what was going on. They had no workers to pick the crops. So the crops are rotting in the fields. So in 1986, a few years later, when they realized the chaos and the mistakes they made, that we needed workers in this country who are many low skilled, many even high skilled, but they were paid low wages. We need them. We still need them today. So what they do? 1986, they had the Immigration Reform and Control Act. And what did that do? It had a general amnesty for farm workers and for people who had been in the United States from January 1 of 1982. So if you can prove you were here January 1, 1982, and you weren't a criminal, and you worked, excuse me, you could become a resident of the United States. So they had an amnesty. What did the amnesty do? It covered, there was over, I believe it was 3 million people, or maybe even more than 3 million people that became legalized under the program. The government made billions of dollars at that time. Billions. What did they do with the money? They use it for law enforcement. They use it for controlling the border better, and many other programs. So it was really something that worked, okay? Because we're solving two problems. You had the workforce now, and you were making money at the same time. Then what happened after that? So then immigration decided, the Congress decided, wow, we have all these illegal aliens here again. What are we going to do? So in 1996, they put stringent laws in effect. One of them is called 212A9B and 212A9C. So what those laws are state that if you're in the United States unlawfully for at least 6 months and you leave the United States, you're barred from returning for at least 3 years. Under 212A9C, if you were here more than 1 year and you left and came back, now you're barred for 10 years. Or if you were deported and came back or removed in some manner, you're barred for 10 years. That's a problem. They thought that that was going to deter everybody. Well, obviously it didn't deter too many people because many people have been deported multiple times and they could care less about 212A9C or any other law. And the reason why they're coming back is because they had jobs, they have families, maybe they're married, they have minor children, they paid their taxes, and unfortunately, they had a problem with immigration. Excuse me. So, what did that do? Basically nothing. So then, After that, a few more years will go by. And what happened around, it was, I forget exactly the year, but they brought in a section 245I of the Immigration Nationality Act. And what did 245I do? Well, that meant if you were here in the United States illegally and you get sponsored by a family member or by an employer, you could then become a resident of the United States. And again, the government made millions upon millions of dollars. What happened on 9/11, when we had the World Trade Center, that's when Congress decided they weren't going to renew the program again. And basically, since that time, nothing's happened with immigration that's been of too many benefits to people. It's very unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. So that's what's going on. So basically, right now they're trying to repeat failed policies of the past. They do not work. They will not work. And the chaos that's being created is very, very, very unfortunate. It is very, very, very sad. But unfortunately, this is where we're at right now, and we just have to deal with it. So know your rights. As I said, they can't pick you up off the street. They're not allowed to profile you. You do not have to cooperate unless they have a warrant for your arrest. And that applies whether you're at home, whether you're walking the street, whether you're working, you're in school, or anywhere else. So stay out of trouble. Don't violate the immigration laws other than coming here illegally. And hopefully you'll be fine. All right. Any questions, you can always call my office at 212-227-8020, 212-227-8020, or check my website at john@johnnicelli.com. Thanks very much.
You've been tuning into Immigration Insider with your host, attorney John Nicelli. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.